Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. 5 years ago, my aunt divorced her husband of 25 years after she found out her husband had cheated on her for a long time and fathered 3 children with his affair partner. She kicked her husband out, and her children sided with him. At that time, her children were 23 male, 21 female, and 19 male. Her husband's affair children were 24 female, 22 male, and 18 female. Apparently, her children knew of the affair during their teenage years. Their father introduced them to each other, and they became very close afterward. Her husband's family has long known about it, but didn't do or say anything. So my aunt cut all of them from her life. When my aunt just knew of the affair and decided to divorce her husband, the children got angry with her. In their words, "You are already old. Why divorce? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? How can we face other people if you divorce our dad? Also, it has been a long time. Just suck it up." But when my aunt proceeds with the divorce, they got more angry and said they no longer have a face to see others. And their dad was sorry, so she should forgive and live with him again. Well, at that time, her husband really pretended to be sorry. He was apologizing and begging not to be divorced. He said he had made a mistake, and he was ready to make amends to her. She can do anything, just for her not to divorce. He was showing his forlorn expressions and red eyes every time they met, but my aunt was not moved. At that time, my aunt came to live with us, as she said her house has haunting memories of a long-term deceit from her husband and children. She said it was no longer a good place to live. She was going to sell it after the divorce. That house was part of her share of my grandparents' estate. Her 2 siblings each have houses as inheritance. So her husband has no right to it, as he also signed a prenuptial agreement forced by my grandparents. My aunt and her 2 siblings have clear divisions of properties, so there were no fights with regards to inheritance. Oh, my dad was one of my aunt's siblings. I understand why my then soon-to-be ex-uncle panicked and doesn't want a divorce, just because his company has my aunt's share on it. Back in the day, when he was just a startup businessman, my aunt helped put some money on it. They had 50-50 share of the company, and my aunt told him to buy her share or she will sell it to others. At first, he thought she was bluffing, but as time went by, he knew she was serious. Unfortunately, he has no money to buy my aunt's shares, so he tried everything to win my aunt back, and convinced her to just sell him her shares at half the amount, as he had no money to buy it in full. So that's why we can see him everywhere apologizing and begging her not to divorce. At that time, her children also asked her not to divorce and just to forgive their dad. What's the point of the divorce, as she's already too old to find someone else? When my aunt proceeded with the divorce, they were so livid and said so many vile words to her, and they even said it was good that their dad cheated on her because she was so stupid, dense, and no real view of how the outside world really works. She was so naive to be played by everyone, so it's normal for their dad to lose interest in her. My aunt, from that day on, cut all of them from her life and from her will. After the divorce, after some minor event, my aunt traveled around the world, sold everything she owned, and took her life after. But before that, she arranged everything that should be arranged. The proceeds of her sold properties were sent to charities in each place she traveled to. She just left some amount of money for her funerals. My aunt's revenge for her husband happened 3 years after the divorce. She sold her 50% share of the company to one of my ex-uncle's business rivals, and caused his company to be annexed by them and changed ownership. My aunt was quite satisfied with that. Now, last month was the reading of the will. My aunt's properties have long been gone, and her children only got $100 each. They were so angry and cursed their mother to rot in hell. They tried to check everything, but there's really nothing left. They tried to sue my parents and my other uncle, saying that we took away their mother's money and properties. Unfortunately for them, my parents and uncle's family were prepared, and they countersued them. Nothing came out of it, as my family just let them have a lesson, and they just withdrew the lawsuits afterward. What I really don't understand was how my aunt's children were so vile, so unhinged, and so delusional to think that their mom, after they did her wrong, would still put them in her will. How delusional people could really be. At first, they hid their father's affairs. Then when my aunt found out, they tried to force her to forgive their dad. even threatening to cut her out of their lives if she didn't. They tried their hardest to block the divorce. Unfortunately for them, my aunt has connections, and nothing happened. They said a lot of nasty things to her, and now they were surprised that my aunt sold everything and didn't give them anything. They refused to recognize what was on the will and sued my aunt's family. They were so deranged that you couldn't see their classy selves before everything happened. They now looked like bandits who were robbed of everything. They were unrecognizable from their past selves. Because of them, I'm scared to get married or have children. I'm so scared and don't want to be like my aunt. So for these 5 years, I've never even had a relationship. My aunt's experiences were really traumatizing to us young people in our family. My 3 cousins, youngest uncle's children, shared the same marriage fears as I have, and now our family was at a loss of what to do. Before my aunt passed on, she became severely depressed. She would cry at some point, then laugh at another. She closed herself up and stopped talking at some point. We could not make her open up, no matter how we tried. So we admitted her to a psychiatric hospital, and she came out 6 months later. She then started traveling around the world, and one of my freshly college graduate cousins accompanied her. Every now and then, she would come back, and we thought she had recovered. In reality, she was just buying time. She took her life at an unexpected moment, and that caught all of us off guard. I really wish this never really happened. Unfortunately, it did, and there was nothing me and my whole family could do. It was done, and she was not coming back. The pain we've endured in watching someone suffer is really not a joke. My family, after this, has never been the same again. We want to hate the people who hurt her, but even if we do, she's not coming back. We no longer have the fun, loving, and chatterbox aunt who can make a dull room full of life. We love her and miss her, and I hope she knows that. It sounds like her ex-husband manipulated her children to go against her, as he had them meet with his affair partner's children, and because they had money, they think they could just take half of the share after the divorce. Thankfully, Opie's aunt is a smart woman, and despite not knowing about the affair until years later, knew what to do after that. Her children are grown and old enough that what they did was so messed up. I'm so sorry for you guys and your poor aunt. I hope they feel some type of guilt. 25 years, and she still had no idea what terrible creature she lived with. Knowing that this trash is still living amongst us, pretending to be humans while your aunt is dead is just insane. Get married. When you do, make sure you have a rock-solid prenup and tell your partner that if you're cheated on, you will make your aunt look like an amateur. But don't live your life in fear of having the same thing happen. My younger sister, Tessa, has been with Brian since her freshman year of high school, currently seniors in college. My mom has always loved Brian and treated him like family. He has some issues with his own mom and spent most of his time at our house. 6 months ago, Brian pranked my wife on a family trip by destroying all of her makeup. She found it in the toilet and in the sink filled with water and was irate. I've never seen her like this. We woke my mom up screaming and demanded she find out who did it. She didn't seem to think it was a big deal and tried to go back to sleep. Finally, she realized we were serious, so she woke Tessa, Brian, our other sister, and her boyfriend up to get to the bottom of it. Brian couldn't keep a straight face and finally admitted to it. My mom again tried to act like it wasn't a big deal, but I cussed Brian out and demanded he replace everything. We came up with an estimate which was just over $1,000. Makeup is her passion, and my mom paid it because she said Brian was just a college kid. I was pretty pissed and we cut contact with Brian. It has since been implied that he was bribed with a fancy watch to do this, and everyone was drunk. But to me, there's no excuse. I still don't mess with Brian. Well, my mom is currently planning a wedding and was talking about how she has no one to walk her down the aisle as she is mad at her father, but she feels like it's weird to not have someone. Brian volunteered, and she was clearly really moved by it and said yes. I internally felt sick. I told my mom that if she publicly honored Brian like that, I would not be able to go. My mom seemed really taken aback and said I was being crazy and we need to put this aside for a wedding. I said I was sorry, but I could not go if Brian was in a position of honor, because what he did was despicable. My mom said I was selfish and an a-hole and was like, fine, don't come. Brian got mad and said I was punishing my mom, and Tessa was screaming at me, calling me selfish and a horrible son. It's not about the makeup. It's about not respecting someone's items. It's about how Brian had zero consequences for his actions, since OP's mother paid. This wasn't a 5-year-old who did the prank. It was a grown-up adult who disrespected someone's items and didn't care. OP is mad because his mother doesn't care about his and his wife's property and allows Brian's actions to go unnoticed. It was never about the prank or the makeup. It was about the lack of respect regarding their property and zero accountability for Ryan. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. You aren't comfortable with Brian after he did what he did, unapologetically, and found it funny. Nobody is required to attend the wedding. I would not make a big deal out of it. Just politely decline. Also, it wouldn't be bad if you just put up with it for one day for your mom. Not the a-hole. First of all, destroying $1,000 worth of makeup is not a prank. Secondly, why wouldn't she want you, her son, to walk her down the aisle? I feel that there is a lot of background info missing here. However, I absolutely do not blame you for not attending the wedding. Not the a-hole. It's funny that your mother can be mad at her father, but you're not allowed to be mad at Brian and those who encourage him. I'm getting married to Adam. We have an amazing relationship, communicate great, and he is my best friend. But we come from vastly different backgrounds. Adam grew up with extreme privilege, and due to that, we sometimes see things differently. When we got engaged, his parents, Scott and Marie, gave us a very generous amount of money to pay for the wedding and hinted that there would be more money coming when we bought a house. This was not unexpected. He's the youngest child, so we knew what they had done for their other two. I had a little pause about accepting so much money, but I put it in perspective, and it wasn't that much to them. Plus, they wanted to do this for their son. Recently, my parents hosted a cookout and invited Scott and Marie so the families could meet. Everything was going all right, but my parents are huge drinkers. His aren't, and don't hold alcohol that well, but I guess felt some pressure to keep up. So Scott got wasted and was much more talkative than usual. I've been with his son for 4 years and he has never made an effort to get to know me, and was talking to my dad and said something about where he grew up, low-income government housing. My dad was shocked and made a comment about it's amazing that he has come so far. Now, I knew some of the background. Scott grew up dirt poor. He is brilliant and totally self-made. Someone said, "It is the best feeling to give your kids everything you didn't get, isn't it?" Scott then said, "I just wanted my wife to have everything. She is why I did it. And now there are those bad feelings because I have to give my kids all this stuff. And I'm just like, heck no. But then, she just makes it worth it." Marie was like, "Oh," like he didn't just crap all over their kids. I was floored. I knew Scott was a very cold man. I knew that Adam didn't have the best relationship with him. But that just shook me to the core. I didn't say anything because what is the point when he is drunk? But I told Adam I wanted to return all of the money and have the wedding we can afford. Adam didn't get it, but we sat down with his parents. I told them that, and Marie began guilt-tripping about I'm shaming him for his feelings, and people aren't perfect. It's okay that he feels that way because he does the right thing in the end. Scott didn't say much and just rolled his eyes. I was adamant that all the money is going back. The venue, we can't get the money back, so that is the one thing I will keep. But it is going to be a much smaller wedding, and Adam feels like I'm punishing him for what his dad did, and that it isn't fair. He is a huge extrovert, loves parties, and is salty over this. Scott and Marie think I'm being ridiculous, but I just don't want his money if he feels that way. You're the a-hole. Your fiancé's relationship with his parents is his to manage, but you have steamrolled over him like your hurt feelings on his behalf are more important than his actual feelings. It kind of feels like you're only giving the money back because you want Scott to feel bad about what he said while drunk. And you're ignoring Adam's opinions and feelings about it because you want to prove you're a better person than Scott by giving back the money. You're the a-hole. You're the a-hole. I think you're overreacting to the comment. He was drunk and talked about wishing he didn't have to give tons of money to his adult kids. That doesn't mean he hates his kids. It sounds like he and his wife have differing views on how much to financially support their adult children, and he ultimately caved to his wife's wishes to please her. That hardly makes him some cold person. Additionally, they are his parents, so it's his relationship to manage. It's not your place to unilaterally decide to return gifted money from his family. My daughter, Tamara, 14, has been going through a terrible phase at home. I, female 38, can do nothing right. All she does is argue with me and scream. She will not do her chores, and she makes life harder for me and her little brother, 12. I was 14 once, so I remember what it was like to be that age. I'm doing my best to just get her through this. I may not always do the best job or keep my cool with her, but I am trying. My husband is out of town right now. His mom, however, lives a couple of towns over and has decided to chime in. Tamara called her when I grounded her for skipping school and vaping W with her D-Gen friends. I took away all her screen privileges, except her laptop, which she needs for school. I'm a dummy, because I called her grandmother on it. My mother-in-law Helen is usually a level-headed woman, so I have no idea why she has decided that her parenting advice is wanted or warranted at this time. She said that I am being cruel to her poor baby girl, and that I should not be trying to control her like this. I said that I was punishing my daughter for unacceptable behavior, and that how I reprimand my child was not her problem. She countered with the fact that she raised 4 children, all boys by the way, that she did not have to punish this way. I know her youngest was out of the house before smartphones, so it is different. My daughter came into the room while I was talking to Helen and started screaming about what a terrible person I am and that she wants to move out as soon as she can. Helen said that none of her kids ever said that, so she must be a better mother. I asked her if she was serious and wanted to give it a shot. Tamara jumped at the opportunity and begged her grandmother to take her. Helen agreed. I drove her to Helen's house and said I would come back when my husband gets home and we can talk. I dropped her off on Saturday, 3 days ago. Helen started calling me on Sunday. I need to come get my daughter. Sorry, I can't. My son and I went to visit my folks for the week. I thought it would be a good opportunity to see my parents at their farm, since my daughter hates it there away from her friends in the city. My parents are also the last people on earth with dial-up internet. My son does not care because he gets to play with the horses. It is a little early yet for foals, but who knows? Helen asked me to please come get Tamara. She even called my husband. He called me and I told him what was going on. He said that if his mom had asked for it, then she needed to follow through. I love that guy. I also fielded calls from my 2 sisters-in-law. They asked me what was going on, so I told them. They asked if I was really going to leave Tamara with our mother-in-law for another week. I said that is where she was staying unless they wanted to watch her. They both noped out without suggesting I go get her. Tamara and Helen each have their reasons for thinking I am an a-hole. I do not think my daughter is. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. You are not abandoning her there permanently. You are letting her and her grandmother both have what they asked for. 1 week is not the end of the world. I'm glad that your husband had your back. It is a shiny spine, and support is great. My mom tried this when my son was 8 months and not sleeping more than 2 hours at a time. Apparently, I didn't know what I was doing, and it was dead easy to get babies to sleep. No one had colic in her day. It's just an excuse. So I let her have an overnight. She never mentioned it again and was so frazzled the next day she was basically shaking. Not the a-hole. Maybe this will teach your daughter a lesson about how to behave. Ignore everyone calling you an a-hole. I guarantee you they have feral children.